Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. Today I am joined by Dougie Critchley and Christopher Hamill. Dougs, how are you getting on, mate? I know you're doing a bit of marathon training at the moment. How's it all going?
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Even. Yeah, no, I've got quite a few blisters on the bottom of my feet, which doesn't sound like too bad, but actually when you're trying to do regular running, it's the most annoying thing, and they just won't bloody heal. So I'm trying to deal with that, but otherwise I'm all right. It's nearly done. I've got about 3 weeks to go.
It's nearly done. These two are both raising very good money for very good causes. Hamster, you're doing a lot of miles at the moment as well. What are you up to at the moment?
What a way to open the show, thinking about Doogie's feet covered in blisters. You know what? I've already moaned about my rib on winners and losers. I've not ran in about a week. Did do about 18k the other day, though, which is the furthest I've run it in quite some time. I was completely cooked afterwards. But yeah, shout out to everyone that's donated. Very much appreciated from both me and Dougie.
Yeah, if you haven't already donated, make sure you go and do it. I'm sure the links are in their social media somewhere. If not, we'll put them in the bio below. Right, let's crack straight on with the questions then. The first one has been sent in by Tiru Hemanth. And he says, what will the impact of Sancho's delayed move to Manchester United be? Now, I don't want this just to be about Manchester United and Jadon Sancho, because that's all we've spoken about this transfer window. So we're going to kind of pivot it to the rest of the top 6 clubs, because we've spoken about quite a lot of clubs outside the top 6 on Sunday Vibes. So we'll bring it back to the clicks.
People moan, but we put Valencia and West Ham on the thumbnail last week, and it massively underperformed. All right, so I don't want to hear it in the comments at all.
Yeah, so we'll go through, let's say, club by club and just have a look at the kind of business they've done. Is there going to be any more business to do? Because by the time this video goes out, there'll only be 15 days of the summer window left, of course, closing on October the 5th. Dukes, do you want to start with Liverpool? Obviously, the champions elect. Well, not even elect, they are the champions.
The current champions, exactly. I mean, there's probably more exciting teams to talk about, which we'll get on to, the likes of Spurs, etc. Because for Liverpool, it's been a really quiet window. I mean, we've talked about it briefly, but Dejan Lovren's left to Zenit. Kostas Tsimikas, I think that's how you pronounce it, has come in from Olympiacos. Back up to Andy Robertson. Looks like he'll be perfectly able to do that role. Adam Lallana's obviously gone. Nathaniel Klein's been released. They let their third choice goalkeeper, Andy Longeren, leave as well. And some Liverpool fans on social media, which is never the best place to judge sort of the mood of the whole club, but some of them have been quite angry with their owners for the lack of spending, particularly over the Thiago transfer. But really, you've kind of got to look at it over the last few years. And Liverpool have been fairly quiet in the last couple of windows. So since spending £163 million on Alisson, Naby Keita, who was signed the year before but arrived the year I'm about to talk about, and Fabinho in the summer of 2018, Liverpool have made a net £30 million profit over the last 2 seasons on transfers. Now, over those last 2 seasons, they have been enormously successful, as we all know. Champions League, Club World Cup, Super Cup, Premier League, accumulating 196 points over those 2 campaigns. And Klopp has completely revolutionised the squad. In terms of players that were there prior to his arrival, only Bobby Firmino, Joe Gomez, and I think James Milner was there under Brendan Rodgers as well. So they have spent a lot of money throughout their squad in that time. They spent over £30 million on 7 separate players, but really intelligent sales have allowed them to keep their, the machine going in terms of they keep their squad investment, up there. They've sold Benteke, as we know, for nearly £30 million, which must go down as one of the sales of the century. Jordan Ibe as well, £16 million. Joe Allen, when he was sort of winding down, £13 million. Obviously, the big name Coutinho, £140 million. Dominic Solanke, £19 million. Even Danny Ward, who I don't think I've ever really watched him play. Leicester City's second choice goalkeeper, maybe. They sold him for £13 million. Danny Ings, £20 million, who's gone on to be perfect for Southampton, but wasn't going to play regularly at Liverpool. So I think that's a perfectly good deal as well. So that's meant that they've actually spent a net £71 million, just £71 million, since the start of 16-17. And this has been a complete revolution of the side, and a very successful one at that. They've created one of the best teams in Premier League history. So in terms of what they need this window, we've talked about Thiago to death even. I'm not going to talk about Thiago anymore. And we've talked about their forward depth. Again, that seems like we've covered that quite extensively, although everyone knows that we think they should have probably gone for Timo Werner while they had the chance. But for my mind and my money, I definitely think they could do with an additional centre-back, to be fair. I think Joel Matip's the only senior backup. And Joe Gomez and Van Dijk, both of them, equally, I think, have looked really vulnerable. since about sort of February, March time, but particularly post-lockdown. So they only conceded 15 goals in 26 games, the 26 opening games, I should say, last year, 0.58 goals per game. But since February and that West Ham game, they've conceded 21 in 13, which is 1.6 goals a game, which does suggest it's not just sort of cockiness or getting relaxed after winning the title. This is a slightly longer term issue. And I'm not just blaming it on Gomez and Van Dijk, because I think Trent Alexander-Arnold was slightly caught out by Harrison for one of the goals. I don't think some of the protection offered by Henderson was quite Fabinho levels on Saturday either. But I think they could do with another centre-back. In terms of who that is, it's quite difficult, because obviously that player will probably have to do with a bench role. They probably won't be able to displace Gomez and Van Dijk, and probably shouldn't on the basis of last year. So I was thinking Jason Denayer would be very good. I think from Lyon, 25 still, played a crucial role in their run to the Champions League semi-finals last year. Very solid defender. 1.5 tackles and interceptions last year in the league. 78% completion rate. 55% aerial duel win rate, so pretty good in the air. And he's a very solid passer, which you'll need, obviously, in a ball-heavy side like Liverpool. 64 passes per game with a 94% pass accuracy. He'd be my pick to bring in as that third centre-back.
I love it, Dukes. Getting the band back together, the old Celtic band.
It's got to be done, I think. I think he'd be a great addition. He's kind of gone under the radar at Lyon for a few years. He's a more relaxed defender than his centre-back partner, Marcelo, who's the much more proactive defender. But I think that could suit Liverpool quite nicely as well. In terms of a backup, I've always really rated Nikola Milenkovic from Fiorentina. Absolute unit. He's 6'5". He's only 22. Quite a good few years of experience there. Awesome in the air. Very good ball player as well. So he'd be another player to look for as well. And yeah, third in the passes. Third for passes into the final third at Fiorentina last year as well. Very high up for blocks, clearances, interceptions. He looks like he can go much harder than Fiorentina. So in terms of Liverpool, we're not going to talk about Thiago again. I think everyone knows our views on that. They should definitely get it done if they can do. But an additional senior centre-back, I think, is the crucial bit. Senior centre-back would definitely be a worthy addition, which will hopefully, keep this title challenge going this year, in my opinion.
Dougie, do you think that, I know we've spoken a lot about Thiago, but I don't feel like we've spoken particularly a lot about the exit of Gini Wijnaldum. Do you think that's going to have a significant effect on Liverpool? Because I know that Pato thinks he's or along those lines, but I think he's been a fantastic player for them over the last 2 seasons, and is going to be a difficult player to replace even if Thiago comes in, because they're very different styles of football.
Absolutely. I think anyone that watches Gini Wijnaldum and Liverpool regularly, not saying Pato doesn't, I'm just saying that I think most Liverpool fans would say that he's been a crucial cog of building this absolute machine, frankly, in the last 2 years. Really unheralded. Like, his ball retention is always superb. He's got great energy. He can fill in either full-back side when they bum forward. I think he will be massively missed. But Thiago is just a step above in pretty much every category. And they're the same age, and it's a relatively good fee. I mean, if they sell Gini Wijnaldum for £50 million, they only need to spend an additional 15 on Thiago. One of the best dribblers in the world, one of the best long-range passers.
Yeah. And he's a really aesthetically pleasing player, Dukes, but he's actually pretty sound when it comes to defensive contribution as well, particularly as Bayern is such a ball-dominant side as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've seen him play a number of different roles in the past. I think he was up to close to 10 assists in a league campaign a few years ago, playing much higher further forward. Now he's dropped back into a more sort of controlling role. And I think a midfield three of Henderson, Fabinho and Thiago is just incredible.
I do think that's harsh on Keita, though, because I think Keita's had a great pre-season. And it's difficult, yeah. For
sure. I think if Wijnaldum wasn't leaving, I wouldn't be that keen on bringing in Thiago. But because they're not going to lessen Keita's minutes by Thiago coming in. Hopefully, I think Naby Keita was awesome at the back end of last year, particularly in games against Brighton. I thought he played okay against Leeds at the weekend, but it wasn't a great team performance from Liverpool, at least defensively, at least. So lots more to come from that Liverpool midfield, and Thiago would be a great addition.
All right, let's move on to the next team then. I think let's focus on a team that are getting involved in the transfer market a little bit more than Liverpool, whose biggest news seems to be Rhian Brewster leaving. Let's go to Tottenham
but apparently
Hotspur.
they're getting 25 mil for him, mate. That's insane.
Yeah, I know, big money. Let's go to Tottenham Hotspur though, because they are spending some money. Obviously, we've got Sergio Reguilon, who hasn't joined when we're filming this, but might be announced by the time the video's live. And Gareth Bale as well, Hamster.
Don't draw attention to the fact we filmed this midweek again, because you know what the comments are going to be like. And again, I don't want to hear it. Yeah, let's start with some transfers that look like they might happen then in Reguilon, who, you're right, they seem to have snapped him up from under the noses of Manchester United in a deal worth around 30 million euros, potential 5 million euros in add-ons as well. Real do retain a 2-year buyback clause at a set price of 40 million euros, if reports are led to be believed. And this was something that Manchester United just couldn't stomach, wasn't it? And
I think that's the reason that it didn't happen.
Yeah,
didn't it?
Tottenham sort of pipped them at the post. A solid deal for Real Madrid, so essentially they get the funds they wanted. A good deal for Spurs, albeit maybe a short-term deal if he does excel in the Premier League. And I suppose what a lot of fans are asking that haven't watched him, that didn't see him on loan at Sevilla last campaign, is what is he bringing to the side at 23 years old? Because he's already hot property, isn't he? One of the most sought-after transfers this summer, and even a lot of Chelsea fans wanted him to come through the door as opposed to spending big on Ben Chilwell. But let's just break down his last couple seasons so you know what I'm talking about. 22 appearances for Real Madrid in 18-19 before spending 19-20 on loan on the beautiful South Coast. 38 appearances there, so he was a mainstay for them, and he was actually named La Liga Left Back of the Year. He's only missed around 6 games with injury over the last 2 campaigns, and injury is something that's plagued Tottenham, hasn't it, in the last couple of seasons. We've seen it on the Amazon documentary. Key components of Jose's side just dropping out every other week, so that'll be music to his ears. And in this campaign, 31 La Liga appearances, 2 goals and 4 assists. So 6 goal contributions, very solid. I'm sure Jose would take that return at Spurs. His offensive numbers, 3.2 tackles and interceptions versus 2.2 for Ben Davies. So a bit of an upgrade in that department. Potentially 1 shot. Again, Davies was around 0.4. So if he can sustain this form, a bit more of an attacking threat potentially. 1.5 key passes. Davies was 0.6 and 1.8 dribbles to Davies 0.6 yet again. So in crucial areas, he looks to be a cut above. But he did enjoy an excellent season at Sevilla, didn't he? Maybe there's going to be a bit of a bedding in period at Tottenham, and the demand on the modern day fullback, particularly in the Premier League, is pretty substantial, isn't it? So he might not hit the ground running, but he's equipped to, basically.
Hamill, I do want to ask you though a little bit about how you see this working as a back four, because having watched the Amazon documentary and spoken to quite a few Spurs fans about this Jose Mourinho backline, the way Jose is operating is with a back four, but with the right back effectively playing as an almost right winger role, where he pushes much higher up the pitch. It allows the 2 centre backs and the left back to shuttle in centrally and almost form a back three of centre halves, which is where Ben Davies is probably slightly better suited to be able to play in that back three role. Do we see Sergio Reguilon now being one of those back three centre backs and being asked to do a defensive job? Or is he going to, I don't understand how that fits in with that right back, right wing situation and the reason he signed Matt Doherty.
No, it's a really good question, considering I've just been going through all the merits of his sort of playing style, and they intimate that he's a threat going forward, right? And that would be a waste just to have him as this defensively minded fullback. I mean, this lopsided defence that Jose has deployed in match day 1 with Doherty wide right isn't new. He was sort of doing it into Milan, wasn't it, with Maicon as well, who supported the attack pretty emphatically.
And he did it with Aouar last season as well. Yeah,
so I don't know if that necessarily is going to facilitate a change in system to a 3 at the back again. He certainly can't have both playing that high and wide, can he? And their defensive midfielders, not the most mobile. If Eric Dyer was to return there, Harry Winks' defensive contribution has never been massive. Lo Celso certainly puts himself about, but you want him operating as a box-to-box midfielder, don't you? Like a hybrid 6-8. He's prospered at 10 as well, so it'd be a waste to have him just sitting there.
Puts a lot of pressure on Højbjerg, it feels.
It does, and Højbjerg struggled, didn't he? I don't know if Jose's settled on a shape or a certain system still. So it's a pretty open-ended question, I would say. But it's still a good player nonetheless to snap up at that price point. And
good
Spurs
option,
aren't at the stature of club where it's unpalatable selling back to Real Madrid in 2 years' time, are they? And you know what, it's worth striking up a good relationship with Real Madrid now, because rumour has it they're bringing Gareth Bale back, another deal that might be signed on the dotted line
about this.
by the time this goes out. And yeah, imagine Gareth Bale versus James Rodriguez, a competition for who can finish 6th in the Premier League. Yeah, his agent Jonathan Barnett has said that the move is close, but no cigar, pretty much. It appears like a loan deal is going to be the most viable, with Spurs picking up around £300,000 of that £600,000 a week wage. Certainly not going to foot the whole thing, are they? That would totally blow open their current wage structure. And according to Jack Pitbrook from The Athletic, it's very much a deal that Daniel Levy wanted to broker rather than Jose Mourinho. And this mooted swap deal with Dele Alli was never really on the cards. We were pretty excited about that last night because it made for a good transfer talk title this morning, but not really gone that way. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit. I'm a little bit stuck because pre-COVID, I mean, Spurs' finances were in great shape. They made a profit of 87 million in the year leading up to June 2019. And I think their wage to turnover was the lowest in the Premier League at around 39%. That is absolutely super, by the way. Some of the top sides, you're looking at between 60 and 70%. And so to still be able to compete for 6th, you would argue, pretty good achievement. But then they did put staff on furlough, didn't they? They did seem like they were going to batten down the hatches. But rumour has it, willing to spunk that wage on Gareth Bale. And yesterday, they were linked with Belotti from Torino for 50 million, which for me doesn't make that much sense to have a backup striker sat on the bench and paying £50 million for him. I did get into a little bit of an argument with people on Twitter over the merits of spending that much on someone who is definitely not going to take Harry Kane's place. Like, Belotti has never played anywhere else other than the most advanced centre forward, which is very much a position occupied by Harry Kane, isn't it? So I was saying, why don't they go after Maxi Gomez from Valencia instead, who are trying to ship him out for 15 mil apparently. Had 2 excellent seasons at Celta Vigo, 12 goal contributions and 25 starts last campaign for Valencia, and they're trying to balance the books in a pretty extreme way, aren't they? And then that might facilitate a move for someone like Sangare as well, who more legs are needed at the base of midfield. That is something we just discussed. I don't think
what are your thoughts on Bale? Just to bring it back to Bale, sorry. What are your thoughts on him? Do you think this is a good signing because it is big wage?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really need to touch upon his past exploits. We know what he sort of brought to the side when he was there. But I think at this point it's worth doing. Like, everyone else has strengthened pretty significantly. Barring Liverpool, of course, in the hunt for those Champions League places. And it might not be the most sensible financially, and this is in direct contradiction with what I've just said about Belotti, but he gives everyone around the club a huge lift. Like, he's still a very useful player when he is fit. His fitness is a concern. He only played a half for Wales, didn't he, on international duty before he was hauled off the other week. So he clearly needs to get back up there in terms of his fitness. But it's fun, yeah. And like, I want to see cash-rich owners pump money back into football, back into the clubs. So it remains unpredictable. So yeah, get him through the door, get him signed on the dotted line.
Yeah, I have to say, I really like this move. I'm buzzing about seeing him back at Tottenham Hotspur. Yeah, I think this is so fun. And I do think he'll get 10 to 15 goal contributions this season.
I'm not hot on it really at all, to be honest.
Yeah, but that's got to be from a financial point of view, right? Surely it excites you in terms of like his ability, his stature.
I don't think
a front line of Son, Kane and Bale.
I'm not totally sure that Bale is still the player that you guys think he was even 2 years ago. He had a
Troy Deeney got 10 goal involvements in the Premier League last season.
He had a pretty terrible year last year. He's not fully fit at the moment. He's actually out with a knee injury as it stands. And according to all Madrid analysts that I read about on Twitter, they basically say he's kind of done at the top level. And you say it's just those wages, but it's going to cost 15. I think it's close to £60 million in wages for 1 year. And yes, they might get that back in commercial deals, but also, what does that do with your new January signing, Steven Bergwijn? He was brought in for £23 million. You've already got Lucas Moura who can play there. You've already got Son who can play on the left. I think it's the sort of signing that will be easier to judge at the end of the window. If it means that they can't get a striker in, I'm really against it. If they get a striker in, I don't think it matters too much.
But do you not think it then allows Son to play as a striker?
But you don't want Son playing as a striker. You want him in his preferred position on the left wing. I think he's fine as a striker, but for me, he's always best on the left wing. And yeah, I agree with you. Son, Kane, Bale. It's a fun front line, but it's just not addressed the areas that Spurs needed to most of all, which is like a long-term centre back and potentially another holding midfielder and definitely another striker.
But I think this deal exists outside the realms of what is sensible. Like, I get what you're saying, and he has missed...
Can you judge any deal on that realm?
He's missed 65 games of injury since the start of 16-17. He only contributed to 4 goals in 19 league appearances last term. But you've got to trust that the Spurs medical department are going to be able to judge if he can contribute physically in a meaningful way.
They haven't had a great record with Kane, have they? Like, do you back the Spurs medical department to make the best decisions for their players? They've had a terrible time.
I back them to judge whether like he's physically spent at the top level, which I don't really buy into. And this is kind of a narrative that was pushed about James Rodriguez going to Everton, and after week 1 he sort of won us all over. And even then, yes, that is people jumping the gun a little bit potentially, but I'm starting to become of the mindset where looking out for like clubs financially does not really equate to it being a spectacle for the fans, and like justifying.
Oh, yeah, I think we can all agree it's fun.
Tottenham fans will all want this to happen as well. Like this is a buzz for a Tottenham fan.
I'm much keener on him going to Spurs than United, I have to say. Like, it just makes so much more sense. But I just don't think like long term this is very good squad planning at all.
But the long term squad planning has already been done with the covering of with Bergwijn.
But if it means you've got 15-16 million pounds less to spend on a top quality striker, which you'll need to when Kane inevitably misses at least 15 games next year, then I just think you're just shooting yourself in the foot for a glamorous player who, on the basis of the last few years, can only play 25 games per season.
What makes you say Kane's going to miss 15 games next year? And that signing Gareth Bale means they don't sign another striker. Like, particularly if there's value in the market.
It doesn't necessarily. That's why I initially said we'll judge at the end of the window. But as it stands at the moment, which is all we can go across, I don't think this is very sensible. It's just my opinion, but I just think Kane, he's not gone through a year in the last 4 where he hasn't missed at least 10 games. This is just not what I would have done with that cash.
It is fun though, Dukes, isn't it? It is a fun,
it's fun.
It's a perspective.
It's a fun lineup. I just don't think it's very sensible. But that's two different things. I agree.
It's also
because Spurs have been extremely sensible in recent windows, and it's equated to them slipping further and further down the table.
And I also do think that, like, just from a neutral's perspective, I want to see Gareth Bale running out under Jose Mourinho. Like, he's such a Mourinho player. I know that we just spoke about it was like Daniel Levy pushing this transfer, but there's no way Mourinho isn't in the background going, yeah, I'll take Bale if you can give me Bale.
Fair. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what sort of state he's in. We'll see how he performs this year. I'll just put it on record. I'm not a fan of it.
I think a loan deal paying half the wage is perfectly...
He's going to be on 100k more than their highest earner.
Yeah, but most people
not on a full-time contract.
Most people competing at the top 6 in the Premier League will have a player that is on that sort of money now, won't they? Like, there is more riding on his output, yes, but I think as long as he gets 15 goal involvements and raises the club's mood, which is pretty flat right now, isn't it? Then that'll be a reasonable loan deal.
I think flat's an understatement as well. Let's move on, though, to Manchester United because, while Tottenham are doing lots of deals and have got Reguilon over the line, Manchester United are extremely quiet. Worryingly quiet from a Manchester United perspective, given we're 72 hours away from our first game of the season against Crystal Palace, and we have signed just one player. Obviously, Donny van der Beek, which I actually think is a really good signing. I was listening to Sunday Vibes. Was it last week? It might have been the week before, actually, where Pato was very unconvinced about this move and about how United didn't need him and didn't need that depth. Totally disagree. I think our depth has been one of the biggest problems for Manchester United, and an inability to change up from a starting 11 cost us massively in the Cups and towards the back end of last season when we couldn't change any of the first 11 without huge detrimental effect to the whole team. Taking Bruno Fernandes out and bringing Andreas Pereira on is a big hit, and that's why Solskjaer was making no substitutions towards the back end of the season. So Donny van der Beek, I think, is a great signing, and elsewhere, it's basically Jadon Sancho or bust now. I think for the Manchester United board, I don't think the Gareth Bale links as much as I would have probably taken Gareth Bale, to be honest with you, just to get a name through the door. At this stage, I don't think there was anything in that. The Athletic and the more serious Manchester United reporters were all kind of saying this is just not going to happen. I think even Jonathan Barnett said no, it's just a no-goer. Reguilon we seem to have some interest in, and I was kind of excited about that. A bit of competition for Luke Shaw, and it would allow Brandon Williams to go back over to that right-hand side. But I totally agree with the board's decision not to make that move happen if there were going to be a buyback clause in a year's time that Real Madrid could activate after he'd smashed it at Manchester United or Spurs. I think it's basically just a loan move, which Man United probably aren't in need of in the left-back position. So yeah, Jadon Sancho, shit or bust for Manchester United. I know there are some alternatives floating around. Ivan Perisic, coming off the back of a pretty good season, to be fair. And I think it's Douglas Costa as well at Juventus, the two kind of muted names. And I believe that the reason that those are the muted names is because they would come in for 1 year and then we would go again for Jadon Sancho next summer, which just seems a little bit silly to me, because I feel next summer you're going to get more competition from the likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona, potentially even Liverpool, if they dip back into the market next summer with some more serious finances. So that doesn't make much sense to me. There's still part of me that is quietly confident we're going to get Jadon Sancho, and just going off history, with Bruno Fernandes, this is what happened. Came down to the last week, we ended up paying the money. With Harry Maguire, this is what happened. Came down to the last week, we paid the money. It's happened with pretty much every major transfer in the Ed Woodward era, that we've kind of just run the clock down and hoped to get a better deal. It hasn't worked. And I think Solskjaer will be disappointed with that, because Solskjaer's done his job. He got us into the top four. Probably should have got us a cup, but nevertheless wasn't to be because of that lack of squad depth. So I have to say, Solskjaer's done his job. Woodward should be doing his job. And at the moment, he's not doing it. We should have had more faces in before the first game of the season. And if we don't get Sancho, this window has been utterly horrific for Manchester United.
Fair. Who would you take if you had to bring in a reserve, though? And I know you've kind of just poo-pooed the idea of the likes of Douglas Costa, etc. Yeah. But who would you take if it had to be that interim signing?
I really don't know. I don't really care either, because I don't think they're going to play huge minutes with Mason Greenwood. If you're going to bring a player in that's just going to be a void filler for 1 year, you're going to end up giving loads of minutes to Mason Greenwood anyway. So I'm not overly convinced about any of them. I'm sure we'll end up... Let's say Perisic does come in. I think it's okay. Fine.
Yeah, pretty constructive loan spell at Bayern, didn't he? And they wanted to bring him back for about 15. I don't think they wanted to pay 20, 25 for him that Inter wanted. And
I would be surprised if that's the case for Man United to pay 20 to 25 as well. And as much as we're struggling to bring Sancho in, the arguably maybe even the bigger area of struggle for Manchester United this summer has been our outgoings. We've got a really bloated squad full of players that are on massive wages and aren't part of Solskjaer's plans. And we're really struggling to move them on. I would have liked to have seen Smalling go earlier in the window to Roma. Obviously, Rojo's come back from his loan. Definitely looking to get rid of him, and I would imagine he probably will leave before the end of the window. Sergio Romero in goal, Phil Jones at centre-back. One of Lingard, Pereira and Mata probably should have gone. So we've got a really bloated squad, and the trouble is because these players are on such big wages, we're struggling to find suitors that will pay that money. And I think that's a huge problem for Manchester United right now, and it will carry on being a problem until we can get rid of them.
Fair. Ed Woodward's contract renewal's not coming in handy there.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to put your balls on the line, though, both of you guys, do you think Sancho gets done?
I haven't read as much about it in the last 2 weeks because, frankly, I got quite bored of it. But from everything I've heard recently, it kind of looks pretty unlikely, I would say. Yeah. I think, and of the two players that you're linked with, I'd definitely go for Perisic over Douglas Costa, even though I think Douglas Costa is probably more naturally talented. He's had a hell of a lot more injury issues in the last few years. The only downside of Perisic is he's actually best off the left, which is where Rashford's going to play. So neither are ideal, really. I'd probably go for someone like Domenico Berardi from Sassuolo, who I've been beating the drum for quite a while. So yeah, not too hot on either of those, really.
I think I'd probably go about 60%. You will get it done. Like they signed Renier, didn't they, from Real Madrid on a 2-year loan deal in the hope that I suppose, not in the hope, that he would cover Jadon Sancho's departure. So they're kind of well stocked, or at least they've braced themselves for his departure. It's odd that it's coming down to like a matter of, tens of millions. That is slightly worrying that there's been no give there. Maybe make a little inquiry about Ousmane Dembele. That's the David Brooks thing has been floated, but don't really see that happening. Him sharing the minutes with Mason Greenwood. So yeah, I'll go for about 60% pro Sancho, Matt. I'm going to be positive.
All right, well, let's keep our eyes peeled, fingers crossed that something does happen, because with Manchester United, I do feel like the club is quite closed in terms of news getting leaked out of it at the moment. Things tend to happen very quickly. If you look at the likes of Donny van der Beek, happen kind of in 48 hours out of nowhere. So, keep your eyes peeled for that. Let's move on, though, away from Manchester United to the Gooners, because great first weekend for Mikel Arteta. Looks to be in a really settled place at the moment, and there's a lot of positivity amongst Arsenal fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm hotter on Arsenal than I've been in quite a while. Not necessarily in terms of their league position, but in terms of the whole atmosphere around the club. I think it's a pretty great time to be an Arsenal fan. Obviously, they've had, I think, a pretty wicked window considering where they are financially.
Wicked.
Gabriel, Williams come in, Pablo Mari, Cedric Suarez obviously add a bit of depth. Mkhitaryan and his massive wages has gone out. They've got a great fee for Emi Martinez. Mavropanos has gone out on loan. And that means that net they've spent about £15 million this summer and improved their squad considerably and got their talisman down to a new 3-year deal. And yes, £250,000 a week is a lot, but Arsenal without Aubameyang is not worth thinking about really as a concept. And I still think Socrates, Holding looks like he's going to go out on loan. Guendouzi and Torreira might all leave as well. Folarin Balogun is apparently interesting Sheffield United, although by the time this is gone out, it looks like they might have got Brewster as well, so they're trying to get in one of those effectively. And the squad looks in really good shape. It's really deep. I mean, I tweeted it on Saturday, but they still got Ceballos, David Luiz, Saliba, Nicola Pepe, Martinelli when he comes back from injury, Saka, all to fit into that starting 11, which looked excellent against Fulham, albeit against pretty poor opposition, I will say that. And things are looking pretty good for them, and they're still chasing Thomas Partey and Houssem Aouar. For me, I think of those two, I'd go for Aouar. I think the creativity is what Arsenal have really needed in the last 18 months, really, particularly since Ozil's drop-off. So Aouar would be an awesome addition, but Partey would be fantastic in there as well. So if they can get one of those done, like dream scenario really, if they can get both done, I think Arsenal fans would be disappointed if they weren't really, really challenging for fourth. Like I predicted 6th at the start of the season. I think they'll be at 6th and above really, but with a very good chance of 4th. So I think Arsenal fans would probably take that after the chaos of the Unai Emery era.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that Arsenal seem really settled at the moment, and they should be challenging for that top 4. I think some Arsenal fans that I know, naming no names, maybe slightly getting ahead of themselves with some of their statements, but yeah, I think if they can get into the top 4 and challenge for cups, then Arteta's had a really, really good season. The one thing I will do, just to put a little bit of a caveat on this, is I was hearing a lot of the same noises at the start of last season, when they, of course, had a really good window and spent £72 million on Pepe. And okay, they were managed by Unai Emery, but there was a lot of positivity at the time. A lot of Arsenal fans were saying, we're going to walk into the top 4. So let's just hold our horses and bide our time. And fingers crossed for Arteta, because I think he's doing a really good job, Hamster.
Yeah, I'm very positive about Arsenal's chances. I'm going to move on to Chelsea, though. I was just doing some maths there. So Bale's 300 grand a week is about 15 mil a year, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I read earlier that Tottenham were prepared to offer Arkadiusz Milik 5 mil when he signed on, along with pretty substantial wages for about 25 mil. But I think he's going to turn them down and move to Roma, isn't he? Yeah, fair play. I'd definitely prefer to move to live in Rome as well. But if you don't sign someone like Belotti for 50, and I think Belotti's a good player. I don't think I really established this earlier. Like, he's a very good player. He's got a very good goal scoring record. I think he's one of. I'm not sure if he's the only guy who's scored double digits in Serie A for the last 5 or 6 years consecutively. But just make a signing, like I said, Maxi Gomez for 15, invest 15 in Bale, and you're still 20 million to the good. So I was just thinking in my head, is Bale as reckless as it first seems? Obviously, a lot depends on his fitness. But yeah,
Depends on the end of the window, I'd say.
We'll see. I mean, Chelsea have pretty much wrapped up their business, haven't they? The only sort of remotely interesting open transfer possibility is that of Declan Rice. Ross Barkley has been linked with a move in the opposite direction, hasn't he? N'Golo Kante still wanted by Inter Milan, although Frank Lampard seems to have shut that down. And Olivier Giroud could join Juventus, where seemingly he'll play till he's about 48. I don't know if that's going to happen, because Sky Sports also claim that Juve want Dzeko, that they want Suarez, so he's probably going to stay put. Roma possibly signing Milik, like we said, as a Dzeko replacement, so maybe that'll start something. But yeah, it just looks like exits at Chelsea now, doesn't it? Tidying up that squad a little bit, bringing down that wage bill. Bakayoko might be the first one. AC Milan want another loan. Chelsea want a fee. I'm not surprised. Chelsea have sent him out on 2 separate loans, haven't they, where he's done very, very well, actually. More so Milan than at Monaco, actually. Conor Gallagher's joined West Brom. So yeah, maybe Declan Rice is the only transfer that's left pending, but I don't think he's going to get his move. I don't think that Chelsea are now going to spend the money it would take to get him out of West Ham. And it does beg the question, like, would he even play? I know there's the possibility of him playing at centre-half. Centre-half has been a bit of a sticking point for Chelsea, but now they've brought in Thiago Silva. He's seemingly going to play next to one of Christensen or Zuma, probably Zuma. So yeah, it doesn't really fit into the squad, does it? Is he any better than Kante, Jorginho, Kovacic at the base of midfield? No, probably not. So I don't really see that happening. I won't go through his numbers because I think we've kind of murdered this angle a little bit. But I think Chelsea's business done and dusted, barring maybe Edouard Mendy. Is he a significant upgrade on Kepa? Yes, anyone is at the moment, aren't they? But is he a goalkeeper of Champions League standing, or is he a goalkeeper that's going to enable you to compete for the Championship? I'm not so sure. A bit of an unknown entity in that regard. I'm not an authority on French football. So yeah, I guess another one where time will tell. But would we agree that Chelsea have won this window effectively so far?
Absolutely.
I mean, still 15 days left, but at the time of recording, they are absolutely winning the window. It would take something monumental from Man City potentially, or Manchester United, I think, to change that. I'll talk a little bit about Man City then, because they've not done as much business as I think people were expecting so far. But there is still 15 days to go, and I expect them to have some pretty big outlays over the next 15 days. It felt like they got caught up a little bit in that Messi news, and they were obviously hoping he was going to leave the club. Never happened, and then just spent, I think, 30 million on Ferran Torres and 40 million on Nathan Ake so far. Neither of which I see as starting for Man City next season. I don't think Ake plays alongside Laporte. There's little to no chance, in my opinion, that you're going to see 2 left-footers at the heart of Pep Guardiola's backline. I think that's key to Pep Guardiola, having Ake as a backup for Laporte with the left foot, and I don't see Ferran Torres displacing either Sterling or Mahrez or whoever plays wide for Manchester City next season. I do think they'll get the Kalidou Koulibaly deal over the line, though. Obviously, still in talks with Napoli. De Laurentiis has been very, very vocal about wanting 75 million, hasn't he? And that Man City haven't yet matched that. But I expect that deal to kind of get pushed later into the window in the hope that they can get him down to 65 to 70 million pounds. And if they do, sure, they are signing a really, really good centre-back, aren't they? And it's a man who's going to come in and immediately improve the starting 11, because last season having to play Fernandinho at centre-back and, occasionally Eric Garcia, who's going to leave the club next season anyway, just not really good enough to win you a title, whereas Kalidou Koulibaly probably is. I have to say, though, every time I've watched Kalidou Koulibaly, and bearing in mind, I don't watch an awful lot of Serie A, so I've mainly watched him in the big European games and some of the bigger Serie A games, he has been dreadful. Now, I don't want to say that.
Wow.
Obviously, he is a great defender. He must be for this much hype and this much money, and some of the numbers and people who watch him regularly say that he's a fantastic player. But I just want to say, every time I've watched him, he's been awful. I particularly remember that game against Arsenal.
Yeah.
Which was just almost comical. But nevertheless,
there's always
I'm
an
sure
awful lot of responsibility put on him, though, isn't he? And that's why his distribution numbers are like so excellent, because he always takes the ball like he's the deepest defender. So I think sometimes in Europe, when like Napoli's backline is under duress, it is normally him that either bails them out or appears to have fucked up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, Kalidou Koulibaly probably will join the club. I'm a bit surprised they haven't got any other players through the door. I thought it was going to be a kind of a summer of quite a bit of upheaval. Maybe a little bit surprised they haven't signed a David Silva replacement. Yes, Phil Foden's going to sit in there and do that job for them, but I thought they would go for some competition in there. And I'm not sure whether Ferran Torres, again, haven't watched enough of him, can play in that role or not, to be totally honest. But overall, you know what? Not a bad summer if they can get Koulibaly through the door. They probably should have just paid Upamecano's buyout clause before it expired, though, 2 months ago, and got him for, 58, I think, at the time. Probably would have been better value and longer term, given that Kalidou Koulibaly's 29. But nevertheless, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Get Koulibaly in, and suddenly they are serious contenders next season. Do you think there's any other business they need to do or should do, boys?
We've spoke about alternatives quite a bit, haven't we? We spoke about Skriniar, spoke about Marquinhos, although he's probably thought of as more of a number 6 now, I guess, as well. Koundé at Sevilla, he's going to cost an awful lot, though, having joined from Bordeaux for about 25 million euros. He had an excellent maiden campaign, didn't he, in Spain and in Europe. So I think there's no new news with Manchester City, is there?
No.
But equally... Yeah,
it's a bit like Man United, isn't it? It's a bit like Man United. They're hoping to leave it late to get a better deal.
I did see that Sky were reporting that they were looking at Jose Gimenez from Atletico for a massive amount of money. But I don't think that's really a good idea, to be honest. I think he's got a 110 million euro release clause. So I think he'll cost even more than Koulibaly at 75. And he's very injury prone. Very, very injury prone. He's missed 53 games since the start of 16-17. And 19 last season. And the thing with Man City's centre-backs is you want someone, if Laporte has a few issues with injuries, you want someone who's able to play 45 games plus. And I don't think Jose Gimenez is that guy. So I think there's still quite a few question marks around Man City. I'm not sure that they've really strengthened from last year when, Sane and Silva leave, Ferran Torres and Nathan Akin come in. I'm not convinced so far.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll come to see, though. October the 5th, if they've got that centre-back through the door, and I would be massively surprised.
That will change things, yeah.
They don't. Right, okay, let's move on to some quick-fire questions then. This one from Chad Leach, another sort of transfer-related one. Why are the likes of Buendia, Ismail Assar, and Max Aarons not being picked up, Dukes?
On Max Aarons, this might be a bit harsh, but I actually wasn't that impressed with him in the Premier League last year. I was, he was so hyped. I actually didn't think him or Jamal Lewis really stood out in a Norwich side that had a really difficult time of it, to be fair. Sarr, similarly, I thought, actually not similarly, sorry, I'm getting my words in a mix there. I thought Sarr was excellent for about 10 games in the latter half of the year. He obviously struggled to break into the side until about November, but obviously that performance against Liverpool put him in the shop window. Was he as consistent as you probably want? No, but I think he was still involved in about 30% of their league goals for a poor Watford side as well. I think Sarr would be an excellent pickup for anyone, really. And, if Man United were still struggling to bring in a right winger, I don't think Ismail Assar is the worst option in the last week of a window for around £30 million. I think they'll want probably closer to 40, in which case that sort of puts that at risk. But, yeah, I think
chance at 40.
Yeah, no chance at 40. But I think he would be a fairly good 5th choice if they can't get any of the other ones they're going for. But, yeah, as for Buendia, I mean, Hamill, you've been beating the Buendia drum for months now and kind of baffled why he hasn't been picked up, aren't you?
Yeah, I thought he'd be an excellent addition for someone like Everton before they picked up James Rodriguez. So I guess we've kind of fluctuated between the sensible, the aspirational and the bizarre on this week's episode, haven't we? With no real consistency. But Buendia is a player of Premier League standing. I disagree a little bit.
Was he not in talks with Leeds? I thought he was in talks with Leeds. What's happened there?
I think they're interested. And that would make sense because they're a little bit short in attacking midfield, aren't they? But yeah, Rodrigo de Paul looks to be favourite to be brought in. But yeah, like he's an excellent presser, isn't he? Over 2.5 key passes per 90 in the Premier League last term. So his creative abilities, without doubt, was on spot kicks, but I think only got one Premier League goal, didn't he? And that was sort of a black mark against his name, which became like a really odd narrative towards the end. But I would definitely, if I was a middling club, even a club like Leicester, I don't understand why they don't go in for Buendia. Obviously, kind of well stocked at 10 with someone like Maddison, but
apparently, I've just seen Fabrizio tweet now, Hamster, just on Leicester, is that they've agreed a deal with Cengiz Under at Roma.
Ooh,
that's weird.
Fair for the right wing. Not been very consistent.
Yeah, I probably prefer him on the right wing to Perez, but that's probably a 40-minute rant for another time. I don't know. I would basically, if I was a middling Premier League club, I would sign Buendia. It might depend on how much Norwich you're asking for. It might be a little bit similar to the Sar scenario where they've earmarked that player as someone that will get them back in the division, and they're going to sell other components of the side to make up that kind of shortfall. So yeah, I agree with Aaron's. I think he could probably benefit from another 40 games in the Championship.
All right, let's do another one then. This one from Liam98 Wilson. He says, who would be your ideal replacements for Pep/Klopp? Now, I don't feel like they're going anywhere soon, but anybody got any good suggestions for either of them?
Probably just be Nagelsmann, won't it?
Yeah, I was thinking Nagelsmann for City.
Pochettino for City, I think.
Yeah, but if City want to keep on the sort of stylistic route that Pep was started, which they haven't really shown much interest in doing in the past. I don't know what they're really gonna, as in their consistency of their managers' styles have been quite different. But if they want to continue with that sort of theme, then Erik ten Hag might come into the equation. But then is Ajax to Man City quite a massive leap? I'm not sure. I'd go for Nagelsmann at Man City, and then at Liverpool, I think Marco Rosa is quite similar to Klopp if they're looking to do the same thing. But
I think they will, because across the CFG portfolio, we obviously did a video on it on one-on-one on Eurofootball Daily. They're very insistent that they're like other teams at least loosely follow Pep's philosophy, and I think that was a source of contention with like Patrick Vieira as well, and he ended up obviously leaving for Nice, and he doesn't exactly play that style of football, But yeah, I think this is a pretty bizarre question. I think Pep's probably going to sign an extension, isn't he?
They hope so. I mean, his contract's up next year, isn't it? So I'm sure they'll be hoping that he signs an extension. And Klopp has announced that he's leaving in 2024. So you've got a bit of time with you, Klopp. So just relax on that one. Right, okay, let's do one more then. Oliver R. Payne says, who's going to finish higher, Spurs or Everton?
Oh, Hamill, why don't you go for this?
I mean, after match day 1, if I'm going to get giddy about it, you'd say that it's going to be an awful lot closer than last campaign. Obviously, there's a lot of feel-good factor is rife at Everton right now. I don't know if they'll be able to sustain it. Like they look to have much more balance and a sense of style than in previous seasons. They've kind of overloaded oddly in various positions, haven't they, in times gone by. Probably Spurs still. Maybe it's a year too soon for Everton, but that's just a really generalised view that I've plucked out my arse.
Dukes?
Yeah, I put Spurs 5th before a ball was kicked. And actually, I think if they get Reguilon, Højbjerg, Doherty, Bale, Mourinho really doesn't have that many excuses, to be honest, and a striker, obviously, which I was pushing for earlier in the episode. But even if they don't get a striker, he doesn't really have that many excuses to not be challenging for 4th, which I don't think Everton are quite ready to do yet. I mean, we talked a lot about their centre-back weaknesses, but I think he's just saying that Sanchez and Dyer are his long-term first choice, with backup from Alderweireld and Tanganga coming through. That's even pretty strong there as well.
What's Everton's depth like in key positions? Like Seamus Coleman still playing right back. Luca Digne, they were very reliant on him from a creative standpoint. A lot of stuff came through him last campaign. Like if something happens to big players in the side who's better equipped to deal with it, it normally comes down to so Keane, Mina,
Holgate, I suppose they've got, and they really rate this guy called Branthwaite, who they've just bought as well, but I haven't really seen much of him.
Yeah, youngster, isn't he? So Tottenham probably have a stronger bench, and that's ultimately, like we saw it with Leicester last campaign, didn't we? That you can be as good as you want for the first half or 3/4 of the season. If you don't have those players that can come in at crunch time, then it's going to cost you.
All right, let's do one final one then. Personal question. This one from Mikey Jones 1000. Cats, dogs, or neither? Nobody's neither, I don't think. Dukes, cats or dogs?
100%, 1,000,000% dogs. I like cats.
100%.
I've slightly warmed to them, but I just don't think you can really trust them, and they don't seem to really trust you. I've never met a particularly friendly cat. Maybe I've just come across the wrong ones. Whereas dogs will give you, unconditional love, which is what you need. And the fact they come in all shapes and sizes is always quite fun with dogs as well. So definitely dogs.
Yeah, I totally agree. 100% dogs. What about you, Hamster?
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated by the fact that I've just had a dog now. My cat's 20, so he's like the Yoda of cats. He's been around for ages. And
is he still going?
Yeah, he's been an absolutely shocking pet. I mean, in terms of value for money, he cost a tenner, so he's averaged 50p a year. You can't argue with that sort of frugality. Like, Levy would be proud of that signing. But yeah, dogs just a lot more loving, a lot more loyal. There's a great line from Joe Rogan where it's like, if your cat was 50 pounds heavier, he'd eat you if you were hungry. If he was hungry. And I can completely see that. Sometimes my cat has genuinely looked at me and I've known that he's thinking, if I was bigger, I'd kill you, I'd end you right now.
Yeah.
So there we have it. Probably dogs.
There we have it then, the end of Sunday Vibes for yet another week. If you want to get your question answered next week, make sure you send it to us on Twitter. We usually put the tweet out on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Hamster, anything to plug?
Go and check out 1-on-1 and Euro Football Daily from the week just past. We did a What the is going on at Valencia special.
Okay, Dukes?
Go and check out another thing on Euro Football Daily, the Football Pyramid, yesterday between Joe and Danny, and it was a really, really tight contest.
What, Big Danny Pate?
Big Danny Pate.
Absolute scenes.
Yeah, thanks very much for watching, guys. Catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.